Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you love and seen nothing but hatred staring back? The moment I realized my own brother wanted to destroy me is etched into my memory like a scar that never heals. I was standing in my bakery, surrounded by twinkling lights and laughter, when Adrian handed me that glass of champagne with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. In that split second, I knew. The glass was drugged. And in one quick move that would change everything, I switched it with his fiancée's. My name is Bryn Anderson, and I'm 34 years old. The brother who once protected me from code playground bullies tried to frame me for a crime that would have ruined my life. But sometimes, karma has a way of serving justice when you least expect it. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind. Have you ever been blindsided by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? Or maybe you've witnessed the slow poison of jealousy transform someone you once trusted? If you've ever had that gut feeling that saved you from disaster, you'll understand exactly what happened that night. If my story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family karma. Trust me, what happened after I switched those glasses is something you won't believe. Adrian and I weren't always enemies. When you were kids, we were inseparable, two peas in a pod, as our mom would say. I still remember him teaching me to ride a bike, his hands steady on the seat until I found my balance. "I won't let you fall, Brinny," he'd promise. And for years, he kept that promise. Our parents owned a small bakery downtown called Anderson's Sweet Spot. It wasn't fancy, but it was the heart of our community. Dad would wake up at 3 a.m. to start the ovens, his booming laugh echoing through the kitchen as he shaped dough into perfect loaves. Mom handled the front counter, remembering every regular's order and life story. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon was the backdrop to our childhood. Adrian was always the natural charmer. By age 10, he could convince customers to try our new pastries with just a smile. I was more comfortable in the back, learning recipes and keeping inventory. Different, but complementary, like salt and sugar in a good dough. Adrian's going places, people would say within earshot. That boy's got star quality, and he did. Class president, football captain, honor roll. Adrian collected achievements like trophies. Meanwhile, I collected books and recipes, planning subtle improvements to our family business while he dreamed of leaving it behind. The shift between us was so gradual I barely noticed it happening. A missed birthday here, a dismissive comment there, the way he'd interrupt me at dinner to share his latest accomplishment, the way our parents' eyes would light up for him but merely warm for me. By high school, the gap between us felt like a canyon I couldn't cross. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 16, away at a regional debate tournament, the one thing I excelled at that Adrian didn't. My team had just won the semifinals when my coach pulled me aside, her face grave. "Your father had a heart attack, Bryn. He didn't make it." The world stopped spinning. I remember the fluorescent lights of the school hallway, the squeak of my shoes on the linoleum as I collapsed. By the time I got home, Dad was gone, and Adrian wouldn't look me in the eye. "You should have been here," he hissed when we were alone. "Mom needed you. I needed you." "I didn't know," I whispered, but my words fell on deaf ears. In Adrian's mind, I had chosen academic glory over family. The fact that Dad had been my biggest cheerleader, the one who'd insisted I go to the tournament even when I'd wanted to stay home and help at the bakery that weekend, that didn't matter to Adrian. Our mother retreated into herself after Dad died. The vibrant woman who knew everyone's name became a shadow, going through the motions. I started working at the bakery after school, trying to keep Dad's recipes alive, trying to revive Mom's spirit. Adrian threw himself into sports and socializing, coming home late or not at all. By the time I graduated high school, Adrian was already at Westlake University on a full athletic scholarship, studying business and finance. His visits home became rare, then perfunctory, then almost hostile. He'd bring girlfriends who'd look around our modest apartment above the bakery with poorly disguised disdain. "You could do so much more than this, Bryn," he'd say, gesturing around the bakery as if it were a prison rather than our heritage. Don't waste your life on Mom's nostalgia project. I'd bite my tongue, knowing that every loaf I baked, every customer I served, was keeping our father's memory alive. I enrolled in community college, taking business administration courses at night while running the bakery by day. Mom was diagnosed with breast cancer my sophomore year, and suddenly, Adrian's visits became even rarer. The hospital became my second home during Mom's final year. Between managing the bakery and caring for her, I barely slept. Adrian sent money, I'll give him that, but his presence would have meant more. Mom never complained, but I saw how her eyes would drift to the door whenever a nurse entered, hoping it might be her son. "He's busy building his future," she'd say, making excuses for him. That's what we always wanted. On her good days, Mom would sit in her hospital bed and tell me her dreams for the bakery. "You've got your father's hands, Bryn. The way you shape the dough, it's like he's still here." She made me promise to keep the bakery going, to honor what they'd built. I agreed without hesitation, not knowing the weight that promise would carry. She passed on a Tuesday morning in early spring, the cherry blossoms just beginning to bloom outside her window. Adrian arrived 3 hours after she was gone, his expensive watch glinting under the hospital lights. "I got here as fast as I could," he said, but his eyes were dry, his voice steady. I was too exhausted, too grief-stricken to call him out on the lie. The reading of Mom's will a week later was when the last bridge between us burned to ash. Her attorney, Mr. Geller, a kind man who'd known our family for decades, cleared his throat before delivering the news that would detonate our relationship. "To my son Adrian, I leave a trust fund of $50,000 to further his education and career aspirations." Mr. Geller read, "To my daughter Bryn, I leave Anderson's sweet spot, including all assets, recipes, and property, in recognition of her unwavering dedication to our family business." The silence in the room was deafening. I felt Adrian's gaze burning into me, but I couldn't meet his eyes. "This is bull," Adrian finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Mom wasn't thinking clearly. Bryn manipulated her when she was sick." Mr. Geller removed his glasses. "Your mother made these arrangements 2 years ago, Adrian, well before her illness advanced. She was of sound mind and was quite clear about her wishes." Adrian turned to me then, his handsome face twisted with rage. "You always were jealous of me. Couldn't stand that I got out of this dump while you stayed behind playing baker. Well, enjoy your inheritance, a failing business in a dying part of town. I'm contesting this." He stormed out, and true to his word, he hired a lawyer. But the will was ironclad, and after months of legal threats and bitter accusations, Adrian gave up. Or so I thought. He blocked my number, removed me from his social media, and disappeared from my life as completely as if I'd never existed. I buried my grief in flour and sugar. The bakery became my salvation and my purpose. I remodeled the space, creating a cozy seating area with mismatched vintage furniture. I expanded our menu, introducing artisanal breads and specialty cakes that became instant hits. I started baking classes on Sunday afternoons that always sold out. Slowly, steadily, Anderson's sweet spot transformed from a neighborhood staple to a destination. 3 years after Mom's death, a food blogger stumbled upon my cranberry orange scones and wrote a glowing review. Suddenly, lines formed around the block. I hired staff. I bought the vacant space next door and expanded. I started a small batch mail order business for our most popular cookies. The bakery wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. If you're enjoying this story of family betrayal and unexpected karma, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to rebuild something precious that someone tried to take from you? I'd love to hear your story. Every success felt like a tribute to my parents, and a quiet rebuttal to Adrian's dismissal. I didn't need his approval anymore. I had created something meaningful on my own terms. But sometimes late at night, when the bakery was quiet and the day's work was done, I'd find myself wondering where he was, what he was doing, whether he ever thought of me. Some wounds, I was learning, never fully heal. They just become part of who you are. On a crisp October morning, 5 years after I'd last seen my brother, the bell above the bakery door chimed. I looked up from the display case I was arranging to see Adrian standing there, as if conjured from my thoughts. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his dark hair styled perfectly, his smile as practiced and charming as ever. "Hello, Bryn," he said, as casually as if we'd spoken yesterday. My hands froze on the raspberry tart I was placing. Behind him stood a woman so striking she seemed to glow, tall, with honey blonde hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled kindly at the corners. "This is Bianca," Adrian said, his hand on the small of her back. "My fiancée." The word hit me like a physical blow. Fiancé. My brother, who had cut me out of his life completely, was getting married. And now he was standing in my bakery, as if the years of silence were a minor misunderstanding. "Your bakery is absolutely charming," Bianca said, stepping forward to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, her smile genuine. "Adrian's told me so much about you and this place." I wondered what version of our story Adrian had shared with this woman. Did she know about the will, the accusations, the years of silence? "It's nice to meet you," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "What brings you both here?" Adrian glanced around the bakery, taking in the changes, the exposed brick walls I'd uncovered during renovation, the antique bread paddles I'd mounted as decoration, the gleaming espresso machine that had cost a small fortune but paid for itself within months. "We're getting married in December," he said, "and we'd like to host our engagement party here. A sort of family reunion." I searched his face for signs of the anger I'd last seen. But his expression was pleasant, open. Too open, perhaps. There was something calculated in his eyes that made my skin prickle. "Why here?" I asked bluntly. "Why now, Adrian? It's been 5 years." Bianca's eyes widened slightly at my directness, but Adrian just smiled. That perfect, camera-ready smile that had always opened doors for him. "Because I've been an ass," he said, surprising me with his candor. "Because life's too short for family feuds. Because Bianca deserves to know her future sister-in-law." He paused. "Because Mom and Dad would have wanted us to make peace." The mention of our parents made my throat tighten. Was this genuine? Could people really change that much? "Please consider it," Bianca said softly. "Family is so precious. I lost my parents in a car accident when I was in college, so I know how important it is to hold on to the family you have." Her words, and the genuine sadness behind them, tipped the scales. I agreed to host the engagement party, even as a small voice in the back of my mind whispered caution. Over the next few weeks, Bianca became a regular at the bakery, helping with party plans and getting to know me. She was warm and funny, with a successful career in art curation and a talent for making anyone feel at ease. We stayed late one night, sampling pastries and wine for the event, and I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone, about Mom's final days, about the weight of keeping the bakery going, about the loneliness of losing my entire family in different ways. "Adrian really does regret how things went," she said, her eyes sincere. "He talks about you all the time. He's kept every article and review about the bakery's success." I wanted to believe her, desperately. Adrian, meanwhile, maintained a polite distance. He'd stop by occasionally. Always impeccably dressed, always with that same calculated pleasantness. He asked questions about the bakery, how many employees I had, what our annual revenue was, whether I'd considered expanding to multiple locations. "You've built something impressive here," he said during one visit, running his finger along the marble countertop I'd splurged on during the renovation. "Mom would be proud." The compliment should have warmed me, but something in his tone made me uneasy. It was as if he were appraising the bakery rather than admiring it. One afternoon, as we discussed the engagement party menu, Adrian casually mentioned a business opportunity that could take Anderson's sweet spot national. "I've got connections with some restaurant groups looking to diversify," he said. "They could make you an offer that would set you up for life. You could sell, travel, do whatever you want without being tied down to this place." "I don't want to sell," I said firmly. "This isn't just a business to me, Adrian. It's Mom and Dad's legacy." A flash of something, annoyance, frustration, crossed his face before he recovered his smile. Just thinking about your future, sis. You could do so much more. The old dynamic was reasserting itself. Adrian knowing what was best for everyone, dismissing what mattered to me. But I brushed it aside, telling myself that rebuilding a relationship would take time, that old habits died hard. As the engagement party approached, I threw myself into preparations. Bianca had become a true friend, and I wanted her night to be perfect, even if my relationship with Adrian remained tentative at best. I created a custom menu featuring elevated versions of childhood favorites we'd grown up with at the bakery. Mini chocolate eclairs, like the ones Dad would sneak us before dinner. Tiny apple tarts inspired by Mom's signature pie. The night before the party, I stayed late at the bakery, putting finishing touches on decorations. As I was locking up, I noticed Adrian's car parked across the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat, phone to his ear, gesturing animatedly. I waved, but he didn't see me, or pretended not to. The uneasy feeling returned, stronger than before. The evening of the engagement party arrived, and Anderson's sweet spot was transformed. Fairy lights twinkled from the ceiling, creating the illusion of stars indoors. White roses and baby's breath spilled from vintage ceramic vases. The display cases were filled with artfully arranged pastries, and a champagne fountain bubbled in the center of the main table. I wore a simple blue dress and my mother's gold locket, the one containing a tiny photo of our family when we were whole and happy. As guests began to arrive, Adrian's college friends, colleagues from his investment firm, Bianca's art world connections, I felt a strange sense of being a stranger at my own event. These people knew a version of Adrian I had never met, a life he had built without me. Bianca arrived early, stunning in a cream-colored dress that made her look like a modern Grace Kelly. She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for doing this," she whispered. "It means everything to have his family here." Adrian arrived fashionably late, working the room like the natural host he'd always been. He kissed cheeks, shook hands, told charming anecdotes that had groups of guests laughing appreciatively. From a distance watching him, I could almost forget the years of silence, the bitter accusations, the complete severance of our relationship. Almost. As the party hit its stride, Adrian clinked his glass for attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate our engagement," he said, his arm around Bianca's waist. "And especially my sister, Bryn, for hosting us in this beautiful bakery that our parents would be so proud to see." All eyes turned to me, and Adrian raised his glass higher. "To family," he said, his gaze locking with mine across the room. "And to new beginnings." The guests echoed his toast, and the party continued. I mingled, played hostess, accepted compliments on the food and decor. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Adrian watched me throughout the evening, his eyes following me as I moved around the room. Not with brotherly affection, but with something calculating, almost predatory. An hour into the party, I was standing by the dessert table when Adrian approached with 2 flutes of champagne. "Special toast, just for us," he said, handing me one, to putting the past behind us. The champagne looked no different from what was being served to everyone else, but Adrian's smile didn't reach his eyes. His hand trembled slightly as he held out the glass to me. I took it, noticing how he watched me intently, waiting for me to drink. A memory surfaced. Adrian as a teenager, switching my soda for salt water at a family barbecue, laughing when I gagged on the first sip. A harmless prank then, but now? "Aren't you going to drink?" he asked, his voice tight. "In a minute," I said. "I want to check on the kitchen first." His jaw clenched briefly before he forced another smile. "Don't be long. This is the good stuff." As I turned toward the kitchen, Bianca approached, her cheeks flushed from dancing. "This party is magical, Bryn. Everyone's having such a wonderful time." Adrian had set both champagne flutes down on a nearby table while greeting another guest. In that moment, a certainty gripped me. Cold, clear, and terrible. I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it, but I knew with bone-deep conviction that something was wrong with that champagne. Acting on pure instinct, I switched the glasses when no one was looking. Bianca reached for one of the flutes. "Is this for me?" I'm parched from dancing. Before I could stop her, before I could process what I'd just done, she took a large sip. Adrian turned back, his eyes widening as he saw Bianca with what he thought was my glass. "Wait," he started, but it was too late. I pretended to sip from the other glass, watching Adrian over the rim. His face had gone ashen, his eyes darting between Bianca and me. Within minutes, Bianca began to sway on her feet. "I feel strange," she murmured, her words slurring. Really dizzy suddenly, she collapsed before anyone could catch her, crumpling to the floor in a heap of cream-colored silk. The room erupted in gasps and shouts. Someone called for a doctor. Adrian knelt beside her, his face a mask of shock and, was that guilt? "Someone call an ambulance," I shouted, my heart hammering in my chest. As people scrambled for phones, I grabbed both champagne flutes and set them aside, making sure they wouldn't be cleared away or accidentally consumed by someone else. The paramedics arrived within minutes, loading a still unconscious Bianca onto a stretcher. Adrian made to go with her, but I grabbed his arm. "What did you do?" I hissed, low enough that only he could hear. His face contorted, rage and panic fighting for dominance. "This is your fault," he spat. "You were supposed to drink that." The admission hit me like a physical blow. My own brother had tried to drug me. But why? Before I could demand answers, the police arrived. In the chaos of the party's abrupt end, I managed to hand over both champagne flutes to an officer, explaining my suspicions. Adrian was already in the ambulance with Bianca, playing the part of the distraught fiancé perfectly. As the last guests left, murmuring in confusion and concern, I stood alone in the bakery that had been so vibrant just hours before. The fairy lights still twinkled overhead, but they no longer seemed magical. Just cold and distant, like stars watching impassively as human dramas unfold beneath them. For those of you who've ever had a gut feeling that saved you from disaster, leave a comment below. Sometimes instinct is the only thing standing between us and catastrophe. And if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories of family karma, because what happened next is something I still can't believe. The hospital waiting room was a special kind of purgatory. Uncomfortable chairs, two bright fluorescent lights, and the constant beep of distant monitors. I sat with my hands clenched in my lap, ignoring Adrian's glares from across the room. We'd been there for hours, waiting for news about Bianca. Finally, a doctor emerged, clipboard in hand. "Miss Henderson is stable," she said. "We've run toxicology tests. She was given a substantial dose of rohypnol, commonly known as a date rape drug." Adrian's performance was almost convincing, the shocked gasp, the concerned questions, the protective anger. But I saw how his eyes wouldn't meet the doctor's, how his hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his hair. "Can I see her?" he asked. "She's asking for Bryn," the doctor replied, and I couldn't help the small, vindictive satisfaction I felt at Adrian's expression. Bianca was pale against the hospital sheets, an IV in her arm, but her eyes were clear. "What happened?" she asked as soon as I entered the room. I sat beside her bed, choosing my words carefully. "Someone put something in your drink," I said. "The police are investigating." Her brow furrowed. "But I only had champagne that Adrian brought over." She trailed off, the implication hanging in the air between us. "Bianca," I said gently, "I need to ask you something important. Has Adrian been acting strangely lately, asking about the bakery more than usual, about money?" Her eyes widened slightly. "He's been stressed about finances," she admitted. "His investment firm had some losses. And yes, he's been fixated on your bakery lately, talking about how successful it's become, how it could be franchised." She paused. "Why, you don't think?" Before I could respond, two police officers appeared at the door. "Miss Anderson, we need to speak with you and your brother." In a small conference room down the hall, Detective Rivera laid out what they'd found. The champagne I'd been given contained enough sedatives to render me unconscious for hours. Security footage from the bakery, cameras I'd installed after a break-in the previous year, showed Adrian at the drink table, removing something from his pocket and dissolving it into one of the flutes. "We also have this," the detective said, sliding a phone across the table. "Adrian's phone. We obtained a warrant based on the evidence. There are text messages here that are concerning." The texts were between Adrian and someone named Mark, a lawyer, judging by the content. They discussed getting me to sign over the bakery while incapacitated, with references to forged documents and a plan to claim I'd been embezzling funds and needed to liquidate assets quickly. Adrian's plan became horrifyingly clear: drug me at the party, get me to sign ownership papers while impaired, then use those documents and false accusations to take control of the bakery. He'd been desperate enough for money to destroy me. "This is ridiculous," Adrian sputtered, but his confidence was crumbling. "That's not my phone. Those aren't my messages." "The phone was in your pocket, Mr. Anderson," Detective Rivera said flatly. "And the messages are authenticated to your accounts." They arrested him there in the hospital, reading him his rights as he shouted that I was setting him up, that I'd always been jealous of him. The same accusations he'd hurled at me years ago over our mother's will, now echoing down the sterile hospital corridor as they led him away. I returned to Bianca's room, shaking with adrenaline and delayed shock. She was sitting up, her face tear-streaked but composed. "He confessed," she said before I could speak. "He came in here before the police arrived, desperate and panicking. Said it was all for us, for our future. That you didn't deserve the bakery." She wiped a tear. "I recorded it on my phone. I've already given it to the police." The days that followed were a blur of police statements, media inquiries, and legal proceedings. The story was too sensational to ignore. Successful bakery owner targeted by jealous brother in drugging scheme gone wrong. Reporters camped outside the bakery. Online orders poured in from people who'd read about the scandal and wanted to support me. Adrian was charged with attempted assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, and several other crimes. His investment firm fired him immediately. His friends distanced themselves. His carefully constructed life collapsed like a soufflé removed from the oven too soon. Meanwhile, the bakery became busier than ever. The community rallied around me, with regular customers bringing flowers and supportive notes. A local newspaper ran a feature on Anderson's sweet spot, praising its resilience and my strength in the face of betrayal. Bianca and I maintained our friendship through it all. She broke off the engagement, of course. But she didn't disappear from my life. "You saved me from more than just being drugged," she told me over coffee one morning. "You saved me from a lifetime with someone who could do something so terrible to his own sister." 6 months after the engagement party, Adrian's case went to trial. I testified, describing our childhood, our parents' deaths, the inheritance, and the years of silence. I described the night of the party, the instinct that made me switch the glasses, the horror of watching Bianca collapse. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Sitting in that courtroom as the verdict was read, I felt no joy, no triumph, just a profound sadness for what could have been. The brother who had once promised he wouldn't let me fall had tried to orchestrate my downfall. The family I'd longed to rebuild was now irreparably shattered. Adrian was sentenced to 5 years in prison. As they led him away, he looked back at me, and for a brief moment I glimpsed the boy he'd once been. Confused, hurt, seeking reassurance. Then the mask slipped back into place, and he was gone. I threw myself into the bakery with renewed purpose. The publicity from the trial, though unwelcome in many ways, had put Anderson's sweet spot on the map. I hired more staff, expanded our online shipping, and even published a cookbook featuring our most popular recipes, alongside stories of the bakery's history. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from Adrian. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. "Bryn," he wrote in the careful handwriting I remembered from childhood, "I don't expect forgiveness, and I won't insult you by asking for it. What I did was unforgivable. I've had a lot of time to think about why I became the person who could do such a thing to his own sister. The truth is, I was jealous. Not of the bakery itself, but of your certainty, your purpose. You always knew who you were and what you wanted. I spent my life chasing success without ever defining what that meant to me. I built a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt hollow inside. That's not an excuse. Just the pathetic realization of a man who has lost everything that actually matters. I am sorry. For whatever that's worth." I folded the letter and put it away, not ready to respond but not willing to discard it either. Some wounds take more than words to heal. Bianca moved to Chicago for a curator position at a prestigious gallery. but we kept in touch. She visited whenever she was in town, and we talked regularly. "You know," she said during one visit, "in a twisted way, I'm grateful for what happened. It showed me who Adrian really was before it was too late, and it brought you into my life." The bakery continued to thrive. I expanded into the building next door, adding a coffee shop and small event space. I started a mentorship program for young people interested in culinary arts, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. On the 5th anniversary of the bakery's renovation, I unveiled a small plaque dedicated to my parents, Samuel and Eleanor Anderson. They kneaded love into everything they created. As for Adrian, I heard from mutual acquaintances that he was taking business courses in prison, teaching fellow inmates about financial literacy. Small steps toward redemption, perhaps. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to see him again, to attempt any kind of reconciliation. Some betrayals cut too deep. But I had learned something valuable from the whole ordeal. Family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, and showing up when it matters. I had built a new family, my loyal employees, my friends, my community of customers who had supported me through the darkness. On quiet mornings, before the bakery opens, I sometimes think about that moment of intuition that saved me, that inexplicable certainty that made me switch the glasses. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe it was something more. My parents watching over me, perhaps. I like to think they would be proud of what I've built. Not just the successful business, but the life of integrity and purpose. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Family betrayal leaves scars that never completely fade, but they can become part of your strength. If you've experienced something similar, know that you're not alone. Like, subscribe, and share your own stories of resilience in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't about getting even. It's about living well in spite of those who tried to bring you down. As for me, I'm still baking, still creating, still finding joy in the simple alchemy of flour, sugar, and butter. Every loaf that comes out of my oven is a testament to survival. Every customer who leaves with a smile is a victory over bitterness. And every day I choose happiness is another day I refuse to let betrayal define me. That, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all.